feel free to take it away.
Yes, thank you a lot. Hello from our part. We are very happy to be here and give a short talk on our topic or on our study, which is actually a smaller case study from a larger project in which we analyze gender depictions more broadly. This is what we present to you today. We will start with a little background on canonicity and reading lists. I will then go into more detail about our corpora. We have two of them, which we compare here. One is Marcel Reich-Ranitzky's canon of world literature and has been very influential. The other is a small compilation by Project Gutenberg to highlight women in world literature. And we use an automation-based approach, which I will shortly introduce to you before Maria is going to take over, and she will talk about most frequent gender roles and rarely used gender roles. And finally, she's going to present the gender gap and will tell you how deep it actually is in these two corpora. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of background information. The reading list by Marcel Reich-Ranitzky can be seen as a canon because it has been of some influence to the shared cultural knowledge in Germany. The canon is not only a reading list, but has been printed as a special collection by the Hamburger Abendblatt, a huge German newspaper. And this collection has been announced as one that includes must-read literature, and altogether there has been a strongly normative connotation to it. Reich-Ranitzky was a very well-known critic of literature and who was often characterized with the nickname the Pope of Literature, evaluated and selected the works to include in this normative reading list. Moreover, the list includes many well-known works that already have been canonized before being selected by Reich-Ranitzky. Thus, the canonization is supported and the non-selection of little or unknown works does nothing to widen the canon. As we know in Digital Humanities from D'Ignazio and Klein and also from Göritz et al., gender bias is deeply rooted in canonized data, and it is interesting and important to do research on such data in order to find out more about what the representation bias actually looks like, and this is what we want to do today. So, of course, in the digital humanities, we already have research about this topic. In computational literary studies, we have approaches to gender bias, for example, in English, French, or Dutch literature, and there's also work done on gender representation in German literature. But we are not only interested in the question how deep the gap is in canonical literature, we also want to know whether attempts to include more literature by and about women in selected volumes and reading lists actually is suited to make this gap a little more shallow, or to close this gap maybe one day. So I have already talked a little about our first corpus, which includes works from Marcel Reich-Ranitzky's canon of world literature. This selection actually has been named the canon, which is not only normative, but also singling out this canon as the one and only. It is one of the most prominent examples of a German literary canon. And what we focus on is prose texts, and we include texts from 1800 to 2000 into our corpus. We thus end up with a corpus of 129 texts written by 26 authors. One of these authors is female, and the others are male, and you might want to guess who that female is, and we can tell you in the discussion if you are interested. The corpus is not balanced in any way, but a complete selection according to our criteria. Our second corpus is a small collection edited by the German Project Gutenberg. The collection is called Strong Women Volume and is a concrete attempt to come up with a collection that highlights women in world literature. The texts are either written by a female author or feature a strong woman as protagonist. The volume includes 8 texts written by 7 authors. 3 of these authors are women and 4 are men. Altogether, this can be seen as an attempt to come up with a more strongly balanced canon. In order to analyze the representation of men and women, our two corpora, we use a classifier based on a CRF implementation. We trained this classifier in 3 phases, and in the end, our training data included almost 390,000 tokens taken from novellas, novels, plays, and a list created from the dramatis personae of dramatic texts. It reaches an overall F1 score of 78%, which permits us to do analysis of automatically annotated text as well as of errors made by the tool. And this is where I want to dive, or where we want to dive further into our findings, and I hand over to Marie.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I will present some of the results of our case study on the gender gap in two different text corpora that represent very different kinds of selection criteria. I will first present the results of the analysis of the Mareike corpora, short MRRCC, and I will always round off the numbers in order to provide a clear overview for you. So within the entire corpus, round about 107,700 male roles, 43,200 female roles, and 7,500 neutral gender roles were annotated by using our gender classifier. This shows that in this corpus, male roles are most dominant, and with 67% of all mentioned gender roles being male, this corpus even shows a larger gender gap than the 2-to-1 ratio Piper and Grazer named the golden mean of patriarchy. So focusing on roles that occur most frequently in the entire corpus or the entire MRRCC, we come to the following results. First, I will talk about the gender-neutral roles. On the next slide, thanks. Among the gender-neutral roles, the general classification as human and person occur most frequently. In addition to that, the term childs open up a family setting, while angel, for example, can be interpreted as a religious reference or, of course, a term of endearment. Yes. So these are the most frequent roles in this category. Now I come to the female gender roles. The female role profile is made up of four main areas. Roles that refer to a biological sex, like women, for example. Roles that refer to a profession or a social status, for example, queen. Or roles that identify female roles as a part of the family, like mother. And most gender roles are identified by references to a biological sex, and followed by roles that refer to the family setting. So the first largest field consists of roles from the area of profession or social status, and a small number of female roles is defined as part of a relationship. For example, mistress is one annotation out of this category, and this is the fourth main area we made out in this whole annotation process. Now some words on the male gender roles or the male gender profile of this corpora. Proper nouns occur with a high frequency, and sticking to these main categories, apart from the male roles, are primarily characterized by the attribution of a role from the professional sphere, like director, for example. And in the second place, there are roles defined by the attribution of biological sex, and roles from the area of family, like father, are least strongly represented. So to further categorize and analyze these results, we consider the concept of agency as quite helpful. So roles that are defined by the biological sex refer to more passive roles to which the gender role is ascribed to by birth, and roles that can be assigned to the field of profession or social status are more active and empowering roles. So if one understands agency as the ability of power of individuals to act, this shows that in our corpus or in this corpus, male roles not only outnumber female roles, but also have a higher degree of agency. So this is one interesting finding. And then we looked at the outliners. So are there any outliners in our corpus? Only in one case, the number of mentioned female roles is bigger than the ones of male and neutral roles. And this is Schnitzler's novella Sterben from 1895. And among the 129 texts, 11 texts show a profile with a relatively balanced number of mentioned male and female roles. And neutral roles always are very marginal. But altogether, Schnitzler shows the highest tendency to bridge the gender gap, closely followed by Fontane. And however, of course, one has to keep in mind that the MRCC is not a balanced corpus, and 7 texts show an extremely strong gender gap. 2 were written by Schiller, 1 each by Goethe, Lessing, Hoffmann, and Roth. And however, this leaves us with 111 texts in this corpus with an average gender representation bias, which is also characterized by a clear dominance of mentions of male gender roles. Now to the next corpus, the second one, the gender roles in the Gutenberg's strong women volume. And the question if edited volumes like this one help to reduce the gender representation bias. So the short answer is yes, but neither a pure shift towards female authors nor a pure shift toward female protagonists is the key to reducing these biases. In 2 texts of the Gutenberg corpus, there is a dominance of male gender roles, and in 5 texts, there's a nearly balance between female and male descriptions, and 1 text shows more mention of female gender roles. So if we look at this table, which is kind of the comparison of both corpora, in the MRCC, 67% of all mentioned gender roles are male, 27% are female, and 4% are neutral. And in the Gutenberg corpus, the male roles take up 45%, female 40%, and neutral 5%. This brings us to the big question and the conclusion: how deep is the gap? And in this case study, we found out that the gender gap between male, female, and neutral gender references in German literary canon is a clear 68 to 27 to 5 male, female, neutral gender gap. And yeah, as a little conclusion, we showed how a more balanced description of gender can be reached by publishing edited volumes like the Gutenberg corpus, which we investigated as part of this case study. And I think this is it, and we are quite, yeah, we are on time. Thanks.